in terms of maintenance regime, there is no there's no requirement in terms of a daily, or because it's meant to last 50 years. But the process, if you want to do it, it must be carefully planned, because it will involve cutting off the rail, the third rail, removing part of it to actually access it. So the process is quite tedious. All right. So let's move on. So let's just draw some conclusions. I think Minister has mentioned the track and train investigation yesterday has really yielded some very useful information, which we believe will be of great help in our subsequent investigation and to look at what solutions and remedies to be implemented. Okay. And all the impairments that we found in terms of missing clause or dislodged clause, all of them, we have actually rectified them. And rectified not just in terms of putting them back, but we've also, and in addition, secure them. For example, this is a quick fix to at least make sure that all the claws are properly fastened in place. It's an add-on layer, all right? The original design has actually provided some assurance, but this is an additional assurance, so that we will have minimized the chances of this thing slipping. Okay. So going forward, there are a few things we are going to do. We have actually directed SMRT to continue to closely monitor the track, including the third rail, especially in this sensitive area where we found all these missing clause. As Minister mentioned, there's already a temporary speed restriction. What does this temporary speed restriction mean is that as a train comes to this area of running, you actually have to slow down and not exceed this speed of 40 kph or kilometer per hour, right? And we will work together with SMRT to carry out vibration measurements by installing instruments both on the track side and on the train, and to especially at the FST areas, to see whether there are any obvious signs of worsening in terms of the vibrations. And we will also review and plan with SMRT for sample inspection of some of these FST bearings, just to see whether the conditions of it have gone worse or changed in terms of properties. And obviously, while we can do all this, these are what we have found initially. The underlying causes and all of the incident will still take some time to actually establish, and this will be the subject of the review and investigation by the Committee of Inquiry. So with that, I believe I've come to the end of before that, I think it's also good for us to share with you the bus arrangements that we did. I think yesterday we shared that when we delayed the opening of the service to 10, we actually had MRT shuttle bus services planned, and while we planned for 250 buses deployed for the East-West and North-South line, I think we found that in some areas the crowd was actually, it was getting quite crowded. So we actually had additional 55 buses deployed on the ground to cope with the demand. And I think generally the whole shuttle bus arrangement was smooth, with staff deployed and signages in place both at the stations and interchanges. Okay, and the shuttle, the MRT services resumed progressively from 11 a.m. I think this is quite now. And the last part of it, which is the southern bound from Ang Mo Kio downwards, we actually restored service at 12:09. So progressively, we then withdraw the shuttle service, which I think the last one ended at 2 p.m. In terms of basic bus services, well, this will beef up as necessary to cope with the non-operation of the train services.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Some questions? Yes.
It seems like there are quite a number of clauses that were found to be dislodged. Is this something that is supposed to be checked by SMRT regularly? And if it was, why was this not discovered earlier?
I think some of these questions related to maintenance issues, maintenance regimes, and SOPs. We will have to delve deeper into it, and I'm quite certain that the Committee of Inquiry will want to spend time and focus on this area as well.
Is there a reason why there was a need to extend the time taken for the checks today and continue the closure of the MRT?
Well, basically, when we first did the planning to close the trains until 10 a.m., the assessment was that there was sufficient time to do the visual checks. I think the engineers on the ground subsequently as a result of some of these discoveries, felt that there was need to go deeper into it, and also to do some of these gauge measurements, to do some of the rectifications.
Yes.
And as they took me through all that they did, it's actually quite a laborious process because, it's not just a visual inspection. You have to lift the cover to this. You have to, at certain places, measure using the gauge to make sure that the alignment is correct, and then to try and put in place another level of redundancy to make sure that the claws will not be dislodged. So unfortunately, that took a little bit longer than we expected.
You mentioned that the delay will be about 5 minutes because of the speed and the 13 effective train without service. Is it too optimistic? Because, morning peak hours usually quite crowded.
I think there are two different things. Yeah. One is really as a result of slowing the trains down, the duration of a journey for somebody who is taking it from end to end, instead of taking 60 minutes, will be extended by 5 minutes. All right. So for many parts of the journey, the trains will run at normal speed, but over the portions where there are the floating slab tracks, LTA has directed SMRT to make sure that the speed does not exceed 40 kilometers per hour so that we minimize the vibration. Okay, so that's number one. Two is that out of the fleet of 120 over trains, 13 will have to be withdrawn from service, and we will need to make sure that we replace the collector shoes and do those repairs and rectification. So obviously this will have some impact on the headway timings for trains during the peak hours.
All right. The train frequency
I think we will have to get the details. I think SMRT is working out what exactly the intervals ought to be during the different periods of time. The preliminary feedback from them really is that during off-peak, obviously you've got more than enough trains. During the shoulder of the peak periods, you'll probably be all right. But during the peak period itself, instead of running it at about 2 minutes, it will probably be slightly extended. Okay.
But it will not be a significant thing, because in terms of the numbers, I think we will still have enough to run a fairly good headway, but not to the kind of tight headway all around the system. But certainly, I think in terms of coping, I think we will work as SMRT on that.
Probably about a 10%, maybe slightly more increase in terms of the headway. Okay.
How long will this temporary speed restriction last, and where's the specifically?
It's a good question. I think what we have now are a lot of data, okay, from the findings, and we will continue to do inspections and so on. So the reduction in speed is a precautionary measure. I think it's worthwhile to put that in place until we have sufficient time to do more detailed analysis of the information that we've collected. Obviously, it does cause some inconvenience. Your journey time is longer, and during the peak, you wait a little bit longer. But overall, we feel that it is worthwhile because at the end of the day, while we have some indication of what is giving us trouble and which areas is giving us trouble, we do not yet know conclusively what the underlying cause is. Okay, it will take some time for us to analyze this data, for the engineers to go through, for us to put the vibration equipment in place and to be able to measure that. So what we do know is what vibration is caused at the normal running speeds, and after we bring this down, we will then check and we will progressively increase the speeds when we think it is appropriate to do so.